The Galactic Council's xenobiology lab fell silent as Dr. Kexthera stared at the readouts from her latest human test subject. The bipedal creature sat calmly in the observation chamber, completely unaware that his blood chemistry had just shattered everything the galaxy thought it knew about combat enhancement. "This can't be right," muttered her assistant, a four-armed Zilani named Vorth, his secondary arms trembling as he recalibrated the sensors for the third time. "The readings show massive spikes in norepinephrine, dopamine, and at least 12 compounds we've never seen before. The equipment must be malfunctioning." Dr. Kexthera's tentacles twitched nervously as she reviewed the data streaming across her holographic displays. The human, a merchant named Jake Morrison who'd volunteered for routine medical screening in exchange for docking fees, had been exposed to a simulated threat scenario. Nothing dangerous, just holographic projections of Earth predators to test basic stress responses. Standard procedure for evaluating new species' psychological profiles. What happened next defied all known biology. "Vorth, look at these neural pathway activations," she whispered, pointing a trembling appendage at the brain scan. The three-dimensional image showed Jake's nervous system lighting up like a star-going supernova. The human's entire endocrine system is flooding itself with natural stimulants. Pain tolerance increased by 300%, reaction time improved by 40%, and muscle efficiency. She paused, checking the numbers again. By the void, muscle efficiency jumped 60%. The holographic Jake had gone from relaxed merchant to apex predator in 2.3 seconds. His pupils dilated, his breathing deepened, and every muscle in his body had tensed with coiled energy. Most remarkably, his brain activity had shifted into patterns they'd only seen in the galaxy's most elite cyber-enhanced warriors. "Doctor, run the simulation again," Vorth suggested, his voice barely above a whisper. "Perhaps we triggered a medical episode." The second test yielded identical results. The third test showed even more pronounced effects, as if Jake's body was learning to optimize its response. When they finally shut down the simulation, the human simply stretched and asked if they were finished, completely unaware that he'd just demonstrated superhuman capabilities. The implications were staggering. Every species in the galaxy required external combat drugs to achieve even half these effects, and those came with severe side effects, addiction risks, and often permanent physiological damage. The KRYLL required cybernetic implants to boost reaction times. The DRAC used illegal stimulants that burned out their nervous systems after prolonged use. The Vorthan military spent billions on enhancement serums that killed 1 in 10 subjects. Humans, it seemed, were walking pharmaceutical factories that made military-grade combat drugs look primitive. "Doctor," Vorth said hesitantly, his 4 hands working nervously over his data pad. "If humans can do this naturally, what does that say about their evolution? What kind of world creates predators that enhance themselves biochemically as a survival mechanism?" Dr. Kexthera pulled up Jake's medical history, cross-referencing it with the genetic profiles of other humans they'd studied. The data painted a terrifying picture. This wasn't an anomaly, it was standard human biology. Every human carried the genetic markers for this response. Children as young as 5 showed traces of the same biochemical pathways. Vorth analyzed the human homeworld data again. Focus on predator density, environmental hazards, and extinction events. The results made her blood run cold. Earth wasn't just classified as a death world, it was a death world that had spent 4 million years systematically killing off any hominid that couldn't produce their own combat enhancement. The survivors had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Dr. Kexthera's research had just uncovered the galaxy's most terrifying secret. Earth wasn't just a death world that had forged tough survivors. It was a death world that had forged its inhabitants into self-medicating living weapons, and they had no idea how dangerous they really were. Admiral Zephys of the Galactic Defense Fleet read the classified report 3 times before the full implications sank in. Her crystalline exoskeleton clicked nervously as she processed the information, each tap echoing through her private command chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Vigilance. The document bore the highest security classification in the fleet, Omega Prime, reserved for information that could reshape galactic civilization. Computer, establish secure holocom with Dr. Kexthera. she commanded, her voice betraying none of the turmoil churning in her thoughts. The xenobiologist's image materialized before her desk, tentacles writhing with barely contained excitement. "Admiral, I trust you've reviewed our findings?" "3 times, Doctor, and I still can't believe what I'm reading." Admiral Zephys leaned back in her command chair, the bioluminescent patterns on her exoskeleton flickering with stress. "So you're telling me that humans have been walking around with military-grade combat enhancement built into their biology? Not just military-grade, Admiral. Superior to anything we've developed." Dr. Kexthera's image shifted as she activated her own holographic displays. When threatened, humans produce a cocktail of over 20 biochemical compounds that would kill most species within minutes. They have a colloquial term for it, adrenaline rush, and they treat it as perfectly normal. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "And they don't die from this overdose?" "Quite the opposite." The human test subject, Jake Morrison, described the experience as exhilarating and asked if we could trigger it again. Dr. Kexthera highlighted the physiological data. Their heart rate doubled to levels that would cause cardiac arrest in a Zilani. Blood pressure spiked beyond what a KRWL's cybernetic heart could handle. Yet their cardiovascular system is apparently designed to not just tolerate such stress, but thrive under it. Admiral Zephys pulled up her personal files, accessing the combat records of human mercenaries and security personnel scattered across the galaxy. The data she'd dismissed as exaggerated folklore suddenly took on new meaning. Stories of humans fighting off entire boarding parties single-handedly. Reports of human miners holding off pirate raids until reinforcements arrived. Accounts of human peacekeepers ending riots through sheer presence and determination. "Look at this, Doctor," she said, sharing the files. "Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, human tactical officer on the Starfire, single-handedly repelled 17 KRYLL raiders during the Vortex Station incident. I thought the report was propaganda. Now consider that Lieutenant Commander Webb was likely experiencing a chemically enhanced state that improved his reaction time by 40%, increased his pain tolerance threefold, and optimized his muscle efficiency by 60%. Dr. Kexthera replied grimly. While other species relied on expensive stimulants, cybernetic enhancement, and illegal combat drugs, humans simply got threatened. The Admiral's bioluminescent patterns shifted to deep blue, the Zephyrian equivalent of cold fear. "Doctor, how long have they been like this? Is this some recent evolutionary adaptation? Based on their genetic markers and evolutionary history? Millions of years, Admiral. This isn't a mutation or medical anomaly. This is baseline human biology. Every human carries these genetic pathways. Their children test positive for the same biochemical potential." Admiral Zephys felt her exoskeleton grow cold as the implications crystallized. The Galactic Council had been treating humans as a minor species. Recent spacefaring primitives barely above the galactic development threshold. They'd been granted limited membership status, restricted trading rights, and were generally dismissed as harmless newcomers who might contribute some interesting cultural diversity to galactic civilization. They'd been catastrophically, dangerously wrong. "Admiral," Dr. Kexthera continued, "there's something else. The human enhancement isn't just physical. During the stress response, their cognitive processing increases dramatically. Pattern recognition, tactical thinking, threat assessment, all amplified. They become smarter when threatened." Admiral Zephys stood, pacing to the viewport that showed the sprawling Kepler station where thousands of beings from dozens of species lived and worked in peace. Somewhere among them were humans, walking biological weapons who didn't even realize their true nature. "Prepare a full briefing for the emergency council session," she ordered, her voice tight with control. "Classification level Omega Prime. And Doctor, double encrypt everything. If our enemies or our allies learn that humans are natural supersoldiers who get more dangerous when threatened." The hologram flickered off, leaving Admiral Zephys alone with the most dangerous intelligence report in galactic history, and the terrifying realization that humanity's true nature had been hiding in plain sight all along. 3 weeks later, Captain Maria Vasquez found herself in an unusual situation aboard Kepler Station's most restricted military level. The Galactic Defense Fleet had requested her participation in a combat evaluation exercise, though the armed escort and classified transport shuttle suggested it wasn't really a request. As one of humanity's most decorated soldiers, veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts and holder of the Terran Cross of Valor, she'd agreed, thinking it would be routine performance assessment. She was catastrophically wrong. The testing facility was unlike anything she'd seen in 15 years of military service. The chamber stretched 300 meters in diameter, its walls lined with sensor arrays that hummed with barely contained energy. Alien scientists watched from behind reinforced transparent aluminum barriers that could withstand direct hits from plasma cannons. At the center of the observation deck, she recognized the crystalline form of Admiral Zephys herself, flanked by beings from species she'd never encountered. "Captain Vasquez," announced Dr. Kexthera through the comm system, her translated voice carrying undertones of nervous excitement. "We need you to engage the combat drones using only standard-issue weapons. No external enhancements, no stimulants, no cybernetic assistance." Maria checked her gear, basic plasma rifle, sidearm, and light tactical armor. Standard grunt equipment, nothing special. "Sure thing. Document rules of engagement? Neutralize all targets. The drones are programmed for non-lethal force, but they will attempt to incapacitate you using energy weapons set to stun." "How many drones are we talking about?" There was a pause. "We'll start with 5. The drones materialized from concealed alcoves. Sleek, predatory machines the size of attack fighters, equipped with rapid-fire energy cannons and advanced targeting systems. Their movements were fluid, coordinated, designed by the galaxy's best military engineers to overwhelm organic opponents through superior speed and precision. As they activated and began circling her in a complex three-dimensional pattern, Maria felt the familiar surge beginning deep in her chest. The universe seemed to shift into sharper focus. Her heart rate spiked from a resting 60 beats per minute to 140 in 3 seconds. Adrenaline flooded her bloodstream like liquid fire, followed by norepinephrine, dopamine, and a dozen other compounds her body manufactured with 4 million years of evolutionary refinement. Time slowed, her pupils dilated, drawing in every photon of light. Her hearing became preternaturally acute, tracking the subtle whine of charging capacitors and the whisper of drone propulsion systems. Most remarkably, her mind shifted into a state of crystalline clarity that turned the chaotic battlefield into a three-dimensional chessboard where she could see every move 3 steps ahead. The first drone fired. Maria was already moving, her enhanced reflexes interpreting the targeting laser's angle and predicting the shot path before the weapon even discharged. She rolled behind a tactical barrier while her chemically enhanced brain calculated firing solutions with supercomputer precision. She emerged firing, her aim perfect despite moving at full sprint. 1 drone exploded in a shower of sparks and metal. The remaining 4 tried to flank her in a coordinated pincer movement, but she was everywhere at once, moving with impossible speed and accuracy. Her enhanced muscle efficiency turned every movement into peak performance, while her amped nervous system processed threats faster than any organic being should be capable of. 47 seconds later, all 5 drones lay smoking on the arena floor. "Fascinating," Dr. Kexthera muttered to her team, her tentacles writhing as she processed the readings. Her reaction time decreased by 45% while her accuracy improved to 97.3%. Muscle efficiency increased by 58%, and look at these neural activity patterns. She's processing information at nearly cybernetic levels. Maria looked up at the observation deck, barely breathing hard despite the intense combat. The chemical cocktail in her system made her feel invincible, energized, ready for anything. "Doc, you want to try 10 drones next time?" This was barely a warm-up. In the observation deck, Admiral Zephys turned to the assembled council members. Their faces, mandibles, tentacles, crystalline features, and bioluminescent patterns all showed variations of the same expression. Shocked, dawning terror. "Gentlemen," she said quietly, her exoskeleton clicking with nervous energy, "we've been sharing the galaxy with apex predators who manufacture their own combat enhancement, and we never knew it. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in their 1,000-year history. The Great Chamber aboard Nexus Prime, humanity's first glimpse of galactic civilization, now felt like a courtroom where an entire species stood trial. Representatives from 47 species sat in stunned silence as the combat footage played for the third time, each viewing making the impossible seem more terrifyingly real. The holographic display showed Captain Vasquez's performance from multiple angles, sensor readings, thermal imaging, neural activity scans, and real-time biochemical analysis. Every data point painted the same impossible picture. A baseline human achieving superhuman performance through nothing more than natural biological processes. "This changes everything," said Counselor Vrex, his reptilian features pale with shock, his usually commanding presence reduced to nervous trembling. "Humans aren't just another primitive species seeking guidance and protection. They're biological weapons that walk among us." Murmurs of agreement and fear rippled through the assembled delegates. The Vorthan representatives' bioluminescent patterns flickered erratically. The KRYLL delegation's cybernetic implants buzzed with agitated data exchange. Even the normally stoic Etherians seemed disturbed by the implications. High Counselor Thane, a wise Etherian whose translucent form had guided the Council through 3 centuries of peace, raised a shimmering hand for silence. His voice, when it came, carried the weight of ages. "Let us not jump to conclusions based on fear. Dr. Kexthera, explain the science behind these observations. Help us understand what we're truly dealing with." The xenobiologist activated her holographic displays, her tentacles steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. "Honored counselors, humans evolved on what they classify as a death world. A planetary environment so hostile that it defies our understanding of habitable conditions. Earth experienced repeated mass extinction events, climate catastrophes, and sustained predation pressure that would have wiped out any other known species." She highlighted DNA sequences showing genetic markers shared across all human populations. Every major predator, natural disaster, and environmental hazard on their world pushed their development toward one singular goal: survival at any cost. What we're observing isn't an aberration or recent adaptation. It's the result of 4 million years of relentless evolutionary pressure that selected for beings capable of manufacturing their own combat enhancement. The display shifted to show the chemical compounds Maria's body had produced during the test. When humans perceive a threat, whether physical, emotional, or social, their endocrine system floods their bloodstream with norepinephrine, epinephrine, dopamine, cortisol, and at least 18 other neurochemicals we're still identifying. The result is a being that becomes 40% faster, 60% stronger, dramatically more accurate, and functionally immune to pain and fatigue. "But surely there are evolutionary costs?" asked Counselor Jeth of the Zilani Federation, his forearms gesticulating nervously. "Such enhancement must come with severe physiological drawbacks. That's what makes this discovery so remarkable. There are virtually none." Dr. Kexthera's statement sent a chill through the chamber. Humans have evolved sophisticated biological mechanisms to handle these chemical surges safely. What would cause cardiac arrest in a Zilani, nervous system failure in a Vraxian, or complete physiological collapse in a KRYLL makes humans feel, as one subject described it, awesome and ready for anything. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Species across the galaxy spent billions on combat enhancement technology, cybernetic implants, and illegal stimulants that often killed their users. Humans simply got threatened and became super soldiers. Furthermore, Dr. Kexthera continued, her voice heavy with the weight of revelation. This response can be triggered not just by direct physical threats, but by challenges to their social group, their family, friends, or species. The emotional component actually amplifies the biochemical effect exponentially. High Counselor Thane's ethereal form seemed to dim with comprehension. "So humans become more dangerous when protecting others? Exponentially so, Your Eminence. Our psychological profiles suggest that threats to loved ones can produce enhancement levels 200% beyond baseline combat response." The chamber fell into absolute silence as 47 species contemplated the same terrifying thought. They weren't just dealing with individual biological weapons. They were dealing with a species that became collectively more dangerous when any member of their group was threatened. A species whose combat enhancement was triggered by the very thing that bound civilizations together: loyalty to their own kind. The answer to Counselor Vrex's question came sooner than anyone expected, delivered with the brutal efficiency that had made the hegemony of Drac the galaxy's most feared military power. For 3 centuries, the hegemony had carved a bloody path across the outer rim, their philosophy simple and effective: conquest through overwhelming force. Their battle-hardened fleets, commanded by genetically enhanced warrior caste officers and crewed by cybernetically augmented soldiers, had crushed 43 civilizations. Entire species had been reduced to slave labor, their worlds stripped of resources to fuel the hegemony's endless expansion. When their scouts reported a small human colony at New Brasilia, barely 50,000 settlers on an agricultural world with minimal defenses, High Command saw an opportunity for easy conquest and a chance to test their forces against these supposedly dangerous bipeds the Council had been whispering about. Warlord Kethvar, a 7-foot-tall Drac with chrome implants covering half his skull, laughed when he reviewed the intelligence reports. Dangerous? They're farmers and miners playing at being civilized. 3 patrol boats and a handful of ground installations? My kindergarten cadets could conquer this world. He was about to learn why the rest of the galaxy had stopped laughing at humans. Commander Elena Rodriguez was leading a routine patrol sweep of the system's outer asteroid belt when the hyperspace signatures lit up her sensors like a constellation of death. 20 Drac warships, each the size of a city block, emerged from jump space in perfect battle formation. Dreadnoughts, battle cruisers, and assault carriers, enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Elena's patrol consisted of 3 ships: her own command vessel Defiant Spirit, Lieutenant Kim's Iron Will, and Commander Jackson's Unbroken. Total crew: 97 humans against an invasion fleet designed to break civilizations. The odds were mathematically impossible. Any sane commander would have retreated to warn the colony and call for help that wouldn't arrive in time. Elena Rodriguez wasn't interested in being sane. All vessels, this is Commander Rodriguez, she transmitted, her voice carrying the steel that 4 million years of evolution had forged into human DNA. As the familiar fire began building in her veins, the ancient biochemical legacy of her ancestors, she felt her heart rate climb and her vision sharpen. Around her, she could sense her crew experiencing the same transformation. Remember what we're protecting down there. Remember who we are. The response came from her crews, their voices tight with controlled fury and chemical enhancement already flooding their systems. Humanity endures. What happened next became the stuff of legend throughout the galaxy, though most species would struggle to believe it even when presented with sensor logs and wreckage analysis. 3 patrol boats, each roughly equivalent to a Drac destroyer, charged directly into the heart of the invasion fleet. No retreat, no clever tactics, no call for reinforcements, just pure, drug-enhanced human aggression channeled through military training and protective instinct. The human crews, their bodies flooded with combat chemicals that turned them into biological weapons, performed feats that defied physics and military doctrine. They flew through missile barrages that should have been mathematically unavoidable, making split-second course corrections that pulled G-forces capable of crushing unenhanced organisms. Their targeting solutions ignored conventional wisdom, hitting critical systems through windows of opportunity measured in microseconds. Elena's boat took a direct hit from a plasma cannon that breached the hull and vented atmosphere. Instead of retreating to make emergency repairs, she rerouted life support to weapon systems and kept fighting. Her chemically enhanced reflexes and pain tolerance allowed her to function in hard vacuum long enough to target the Dreadnought's reactor housing. Her enhanced cognitive processing calculating firing solutions while her body operated in conditions that would kill most beings instantly. When Galactic Defense Force reinforcements arrived 6 hours later, following emergency distress signals, they found the mathematically impossible. The Drac invasion fleet in full retreat, having lost 8 major warships to 3 human patrol boats. The humans had suffered heavy casualties. Only 37 of the original 97 crew members survived, but they had accomplished something no military strategist would have believed possible. They had made the unstoppable hegemony bleed, and the galaxy would never be the same. The siege of Terra lasted exactly 72 hours, But those 3 days rewrote every military textbook in the galaxy and established humanity's place in galactic civilization forever. Admiral Drakthor, supreme commander of the hegemony's war machine, had assembled the largest fleet in recorded history. 300 warships arranged in 7 battle groups, supported by 1,000 fighter craft and enough firepower to reduce a planet to molten slag. The armada stretched across space like a metallic constellation of death, each vessel bristling with weapons that had conquered 43 worlds. Intelligence reports suggested the humans had barely 50 ships to defend their homeworld. Primitive vessels cobbled together from mining equipment and civilian transports, crewed by farmers and merchants playing at being soldiers. The tactical computers calculated a 99.7% probability of complete human capitulation within 6 hours. What the computers couldn't calculate was what happened when you threatened the human homeworld. As the massive Drak fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Sol System, automated defense platforms registered the invasion force and transmitted a priority alert to every human ship, station, and settlement within 100 light-years. The message was simple: Earth is under attack. The response was immediate and unprecedented. Human merchant vessels abandoned profitable trade routes and raced toward home. Mining ships left lucrative asteroid claims behind. Research vessels in deep space turned around mid-mission. Even civilian transports carrying families and refugees demanded weapons and joined the growing fleet. By the time Admiral Drakthor's armada reached the outer system, they faced not 50 ships, but over 200 vessels of every conceivable type, united by one terrible commonality. They were crewed by humans whose homeworld was under threat. "This is Admiral David Park of the Terran Defense Fleet," came the transmission from the lead human vessel, his voice carrying the calm before a storm that had been building for 4 million years. "You have entered our home system with hostile intent. You will leave immediately or be destroyed." Admiral Drakthor's mandibles clicked in amusement as he studied the ragtag fleet before him. Cargo haulers, mining ships, and converted civilian craft faced his dreadnoughts. It would be a slaughter. "Primitive creature, you are outgunned 3-1 by the finest warships ever built. Surrender, and your deaths will be swift." "Admiral," Park's voice carried a note that made even hardened Drak warriors nervous. The sound of a predator that had just been challenged in its own territory. "You've just threatened our families, our children, our home. You have absolutely no idea what you've done." The human fleet accelerated as one. What followed defied every principle of space warfare and military science. The humans didn't use formations, tactical doctrine, or strategic positioning. They simply attacked with berserker fury that bordered on supernatural madness. Ship after ship hurled itself at the Drak fleet, their crews pushing engines beyond theoretical maximums, overloading weapons until they burned out, and performing maneuvers that should have liquefied their crews under impossible G-forces. But humans on combat drugs don't liquefy under stress. They transcend it. Captain Jennifer Walsh's converted cargo hauler New Hope took simultaneous fire from 3 Drak dreadnoughts. Instead of breaking off, she redirected all power from life support and artificial gravity to the engines, accelerating to near-light speed while her chemically enhanced crew remained conscious and functional despite forces that would crush any other species. At the last second, she transmitted "For our children" and rammed the lead dreadnought. Both vessels vanished in a nuclear fireball visible from Mars, but not before Walsh's sacrifice crippled 2 other capital ships and opened a gap in the Drak formation. The cry was taken up across the fleet. "For our children" became a battle hymn as human ships performed impossible feats of skill, courage, and tactical brilliance. Miners who had never seen military service outmaneuvered veteran Drak pilots. Merchant captains achieved targeting solutions that veteran gunners couldn't match. Civilian crews endured damage that should have killed them and kept fighting with equipment held together by determination and chemical enhancement. Admiral Drakthor watched in growing horror as his superior fleet was systematically torn apart by creatures who fought like demons possessed. These weren't just warriors. They were berserkers whose bodies produced military-grade combat enhancement and whose minds had been shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressure to never, ever give up when protecting their home. By hour 60, the Drak fleet was in full retreat. By hour 72, Admiral Drakthor was dead, his flagship destroyed by a mining vessel whose crew had been dead for 30 minutes, but whose automated systems continued firing until the reactor finally failed. In the aftermath, Earth's orbital defenses hadn't fired a single shot. 6 months after the siege of Terra, the galaxy was fundamentally transformed, reshaped by the revelation that humanity represented something unprecedented in galactic civilization. A species that had evolved beyond the need for external enhancement to become living weapons. The hegemony of Drac had collapsed overnight, not from military defeat alone, but from the psychological shock that rippled through their warrior culture. When word spread that they'd been crushed by a species that produced its own combat drugs, their subject worlds rose in rebellion with unprecedented coordination. The once mighty empire fragmented into dozens of free systems, each desperate to distance themselves from the catastrophic mistake their former masters had made. Drac warriors, bred for conquest and cybernetically enhanced for battle, found themselves facing a crisis of identity when they realized they'd been defeated by baseline biology. The psychological effect spread far beyond the hegemony's borders. Other aggressive species quickly reconsidered their expansion plans when intelligence reports confirmed the impossible. Humans didn't just become dangerous when threatened, they became more dangerous when protecting others, and their enhancement was triggered by emotional bonds that could extend to entire species. The KRYLL Dominion, notorious for their conquest of peaceful worlds and exploitation of weaker species, suddenly developed an passionate interest in diplomatic solutions. Their high command quietly shelved Project Apex, a century-long plan to subjugate the Outer Rim, after strategic analysis concluded that any aggression might eventually threaten human interests or allies, triggering a response they were unprepared to handle. The Vorthan Empire, which had spent millennia perfecting the art of psychological warfare and cultural domination, began offering humanitarian aid to species they'd previously oppressed. Their xenopsychologists had calculated that humans formed emotional attachments not just to their own kind, but to any beings they perceived as needing protection. The Empire's leadership decided that being seen as protectors rather than predators was infinitely preferable to facing a species that became exponentially more dangerous when defending others. General Maria Vasquez, promoted after her legendary performance in the testing facility and now commanding humanity's first interstellar defense force, stood in the observation deck of the massive orbital station New Geneva, watching ships from across the galaxy dock peacefully at the commercial ports. The sight would have been impossible just a year ago. Vessels from 47 species conducting trade, sharing scientific data, and building diplomatic relationships in the shadow of humanity's demonstrated capabilities. General, her aide, Commander Thompson, announced as he approached with a data pad containing the day's diplomatic correspondence. The Zalani delegation is requesting another meeting about mutual defense pacts. That's the 4th request this month. Maria smiled, her expression carrying the confidence of someone who had redefined galactic power dynamics through sheer biological superiority. What are they offering this time, Commander? Full technological exchange, including their quantum computing advances, terraforming techniques, and biotechnology research. They're also proposing joint military exercises and shared intelligence networks. Tell them we'll consider their proposal seriously, but remind them of our position. We don't want to rule anybody or build an empire. We just want to explore the galaxy, learn from other species, and be left in peace to pursue our own development. Dr. Kexthera, now head of the newly established Human Studies Department at the Galactic Council's Research Division, approached with her characteristic tentacle writhing that indicated important discoveries. General, I thought you'd be interested in the latest psychological and genetic profiles of human civilians across your colonies. What did you find, Doc? It's remarkable. Humans who've never seen combat, never been in dangerous situations, still carry the complete genetic markers for enhanced stress response. Even your children show the biological capacity for these chemical surges. It's not limited to soldiers or trained warriors. It's your entire species, embedded in your DNA. Maria nodded thoughtfully, understanding the implications. Doc, you're from Zalera, a world with gentle rains, flowering meadows, and herbivorous wildlife that evolved in harmony with their environment. We're from Earth, where everything from the bacteria to the megafauna tried to kill us for 4 million years. Every human alive today is descended from the ones who were too stubborn, too fierce, and too chemically enhanced to die. Dr. Kexthera's tentacles writhed nervously as she processed the implications. General, doesn't it concern you that your species is essentially a race of, well, biological weapons walking among peaceful civilizations? Doc, that's not what we are, Maria replied, her voice carrying the wisdom that came from understanding her species' true nature. We're not natural-born killers. We're natural-born survivors. There's a fundamental difference between those concepts. She gestured toward the observation window, where the peaceful scene of interspecies cooperation played out against the backdrop of space. Look at what we've built here. Ships from 47 species trading freely, sharing knowledge, building friendships and alliances. We could have used our biological advantages to conquer the galaxy, establish an empire, and rule through fear. Instead, we're using our capabilities to protect others and build something beautiful. But what if someone threatens humanity again? What if another species makes the same mistake as the hegemony? Maria's expression hardened slightly, and for a brief moment, Dr. Kexthera caught a glimpse of the apex predator that lurked beneath humanity's civilized, diplomatic surface. Then they'll discover what the Drac learned too late. When you threaten humans, our families, our friends, our way of life, we don't just fight back with superior technology or numerical advantage. We fight back with 4 million years of evolutionary refinement behind every decision, every movement, every tactical choice. Her expression softened again, returning to the warm, approachable demeanor that had made her effective as both a warrior and a diplomat. But that's not what we want, document. We want to explore the galaxy's mysteries, learn from civilizations that developed differently than we did, contribute to galactic knowledge, and grow beyond the limitations of our world. We want to be part of something bigger and more meaningful than ourselves. As if to emphasize her point, a group of human children ran past the observation window in the station's recreational area, chasing each other in an elaborate game while alien youngsters of various species, Zilani, Aetherian, and even young KRYLL, joined in the fun with squeals of universal childhood joy. The thing about humans, Maria continued, is that we're only as dangerous as circumstances force us to be. Threaten us or those we've chosen to protect, and you'll face warriors whose bodies produce their own combat enhancement and whose minds have been shaped by millions of years of survival pressure. But leave us in peace, treat us with respect, and you'll find friends who'll stand with you against any darkness the galaxy can produce. Dr. Kexthera looked out at the peaceful station, then back at the general who represented everything terrifying and hopeful about humanity's place in galactic civilization. So what happens now, General? What's humanity's role in this new galaxy? Now? Maria smiled, her expression reflecting both the predator and the protector that defined her species. Now we build a future worthy of all the sacrifices our ancestors made to get us here. A future where our natural gifts are used to protect rather than destroy, to explore rather than conquer, to unite rather than divide. She paused, her expression growing thoughtful as she considered the lessons recent events had taught the galaxy. Though I do hope other species remember the lesson of Terra. Humans are pack animals, document hurt one of us, and you face all of us. And when humans unite in defense of what they love. She left the sentence unfinished, but Dr. Kexthera understood perfectly. The galaxy had learned that humans were walking biological weapons, but more importantly, they'd learned that these weapons came with a built-in safety mechanism called peace, cooperation, and mutual respect. As long as that peace was honored and that respect maintained, the galaxy had nothing to fear from humanity's natural combat drugs. But God help anyone who forgot that lesson.